The story begins with a girl named Melanie, who is being chased by something hostile through a kind of tunnel. With great effort, she crawls to the surface and emerges from the hole completely exhausted. However, a masked figure appears at that moment, and she begins to cry, pleading for her life. The masked figure is unmoved and raises a pickaxe, ready to deliver the fatal blow. A year after that, a group of friends gathers to help Clover, Melanie's sister. Still inconsolable about her disappearance, she wants to search for clues in the area where Melanie was last seen. Along with her are her friend Megan, her ex-boyfriend Max, and the couple Nina and Abel. The guys are not very confident that this mission will yield results, but Clover gets angry when they talk about her sister as if she could not be found alive. The last video Melanie sent to her was in front of a store called Hartley's, located at a gas station. Arriving there, Megan asks her friends to form a circle holding hands, trying to capture Melanie's energy. Not as mystical as she is, the others roll their eyes. But Clover agrees with the attempt, and they all comply so as not to upset her. However, the collective meditation is abruptly interrupted by the horn of a trailer asking for passage, as the group is right in the middle of the road. Then, Megan notices that Clover has drifted away and is already entering the store. Nina doesn't let Max follow her, reminding him that their relationship ended precisely because of this controlling behavior. Offended, he retaliates with cruel jokes about her high turnover of partners and warns Abel about the chance of being dumped soon. But the guy reacts humorously and ignores the gossip. The store clerk is an old man named Hill, who has worked there for many years. He doesn't recognize Melanie from the photo, but tells Clover that many people disappear around Glore Valley, which is a few miles ahead. Meanwhile, the friends argue outside, questioning if this macabre outing will be good for Clover, as her sister left home shortly after their mother died. Abel and Max think she should process this double loss better before making a trip with so many triggers. Megan and Nina disagree, saying that Clover was determined to come here and that the important thing now is to support her. So when she comes out of the store panting, everyone agrees to drive to Glore Valley, which according to the owner of the establishment, is a few kilometers further ahead, and they soon hit the road to continue the investigation. Soon a heavy storm begins, and to make matters worse, Abel seems to have gotten lost, making several pointless turns until arriving at a picturesque house in the middle of nowhere. Upon getting out of the car, they are startled to see that the rain only falls around the clearing, but not inside it. Abel films the phenomenon while Max complains about the lack of signal, and Megan shivers upon seeing what looks like a grave in the yard of the house. The sign at the entrance of the house indicates that it is an information center, but there is no one there when Nina and Abel enter. The decor is quite strange, and on one of the walls, there is a large hourglass on top of a skull. Outside, Clover sees a figure in the distance and gets the impression of hearing her sister's voice calling her name. She goes after the apparition and Max follows her, asking her to come back, just as the sun is almost setting. When he catches up to her and touches her shoulder, they find themselves in the dry area again, as if they hadn't moved much at all. In the guest book, Nina finds Melanie's signature repeated several times, with the spelling getting worse each time. Abel also discovers a wall full of missing persons posters, but without any contact information or even the names of the victims. Then the young people gather in the room, and Nina screams upon seeing the hourglass turned over, as if someone had started counting time. Then Abel says that his car is missing, and everyone rushes to the porch, but decides to go back inside upon seeing the headlights in the rain and the threatening roar of the engine. With no choice, the group begins to explore the interior of the house, and discovers a part that seems to have been a residence. Megan tries to use the radio in the basement to call for help, while Max comments on the strangeness of having windows in the basement. Then Abel goes to check a noise that came from the hallway, and Nina becomes worried about his delay. Not getting a response when she calls him, she nervously makes her way down the dark hallway until reaching the other room, groping the wall in search of the switch. When she turns on the light, she is in shock upon seeing a masked man staring at her up close before attacking Abel, splitting the guy in half. Nina's screams alert the others, and Max manages to see the killer before being seen, warning the girls in time. Megan and Clover hide in the shadows of the basement while the masked figure descends the stairs and begins searching for the visitors. Max tries to attack him with a chair, but totally fails and ends up having his head skewered by a sharp object. The two survivors struggle to contain their sobs as the footsteps of the maniac still threaten the basement. Clover manages to grab a knife while he approaches the closet where Megan is hiding. He pulls her out and starts slamming her face into the ground, ignoring her screams. Clover tries to save her friend, attacking the killer with the knife, but he gets up as if feeling nothing, dropping Megan's inert body on the ground. Faced with this, Clover runs out of the house and flees into the woods, where she once again sees the figure that looks like her sister. She barely has time to call out to her when the pickaxe strikes her from behind, suddenly piercing her body. She takes her last breath as the sand finishes running in the hourglass. However, shortly afterward, it is flipped again by a mechanical device, and the countdown restarts. Nina regains consciousness, very frightened, and sees that she is signing the guest book for the second time. The same happens with the others, and they all return to that same point, as if they had imagined the rest of the night. No one understands what is happening, and on top of that, Abel shows that now their photo is also on the mural. He and Max want to take advantage of the fact that the car has also reappeared and leave immediately, but Megan makes a mysterious comment, implying that something will prevent them. When everyone realizes that they have truly gone back in time, the lights start to flicker, and the front door bangs hard. As this didn't happen before, it becomes evident that it is not even possible to use time travel to predict the maniac's moves. Suddenly, Megan starts to feel ill, and her body contorts, cracking in a worrisome manner until she stretches in the chair with a piercing scream, just as the lights go out. When someone finds the flashlights, the chair is empty, and everyone hears a chilling whisper at the end of the hallway. Following the sound, they find Megan levitating in front of the mural, with her eyes darkened. As she points to the posters, her voice transforms into the voice of the person in each photo, repeating pleas and cries for help. Everyone shudders at this performance until it ends in another scream, and Megan crashes to the floor, dead. They barely have time to mourn the loss, as loud knocks soon sound at the front door. Peering through the windows, they cannot see who is there. And then a tearful voice begins to plead for help, begging to be let in. To everyone's horror, Clover recognizes Melanie's voice and tries to open the door. Her friends stop her, but also become uncertain when they hear Melanie being attacked on the other side and end up letting Clover go. However, the porch is empty when she opens the door, and now there is an abandoned house on the other side of the clearing. Suddenly, an invisible force grabs Clover and drags her into the shack, pushing the others back into the first house. We see that someone wrote a message of revolt against the Clover Witch on the door of the shack. The inside is even more macabre, filled with masks on suspended mannequins, and Clover suppresses a scream upon seeing that she is not alone. An emaciated old woman is watching a report about an accident in the Glore Valley mine. Clover begs her to let her out, but the old woman starts laughing and says there are only two options: survive this night or become part of it. Max has already managed to leave the first house and is approaching the shack when the woman throws Clover to the ground and presses her respirator against her face. Reciting a curse, the old woman then possesses the young girl's body, allowing her own to disintegrate. While Max quietly enters the shack, Abel convinces Nina to flee as soon as possible, but she regrets it as soon as she gets in the car. Abel doesn't let her back to save her friends and locks the doors before starting the engine, flooring it. None of this helps much, as a gigantic creature emerges in the middle of the forest, blocking the path and forcing Abel to reverse. However, he is attacked by the masked man before he can unlock the doors, and this condemns Nina to the same fate. Max continues searching for Clover inside the shack and decides to check the second floor, where he sees a little toy clown in a rocking chair that is moving. Grabbing the clown by the hat, he kicks it away in anger and then gets startled when he comes face to face with Clover. Still possessed, she is wearing one of the white masks and attacks Max with a knife before leaving the shack. When the maniac runs her over in Abel's car, Clover is once again the last of the group to die. This makes the hourglass turn once more, and all five return to that same point of the night. Locked in the bathroom, they analyze the witch's words about the time loop and deduce that the only way to escape is to survive until dawn. If they fail, as has already happened twice, they all return to the starting point again. However, Megan explains that there must be a limit to attempts for two reasons. The first is that Melanie and the other missing persons are not around, so they must have died for good. And the second is that her hair is falling out, and the others are also showing signs of deterioration as they weaken with each death. Without a very specific plan, they think of staying in the bathroom until dawn and beating the challenge, but they soon realize that it is not that easy. Abel begins to cough violently, and everyone becomes worried until he simply explodes right there, showering the other four with guts. They realize that Abel was the first to drink water from the faucet, and before anyone remembers that Nina was the second, she explodes too. Horrified, the other three run to the living room, and then it's Megan's turn, whose end is even worse because she explodes bit by bit. Clover and Max also drank the water, and so she says she prefers to end this repetition quickly. Max is shocked by the idea, as it is almost morning, but Clover says that ideally, they should all win the challenge together. If the two of them can stay alive all night this time, the curse would end just for them, and that would mean a definitive death for the three who exploded. Trying to fulfill her request, Max squeezes her throat but doesn't have the courage to go through with it, and ends up exploding too. Falling on the floor, Clover is startled by the arrival of Hill, the clerk from the store. He says it is impossible to win the game by inactivity, but before he can give more tips, the girl also blows up. The hourglass spins, and everyone wakes up at the same time again, increasingly less surprised and more exhausted. Scouring the house, Clover finds Dr. Alan Hill's badge and discovers that he is, in fact, a therapist. He is the one who worked with the survivors of the Glore Valley tragedy, in which more than 1,000 people were swallowed by the earth during the mine collapse. Max finds the session videos, and they watch Dr. Hill explaining an inexplicable phenomenon. He says that the survivors were so affected by the tragedy that they now suffer a gradual metamorphosis, becoming increasingly monstrous. Megan is frightened to see that it sometimes starts with hair falling out, and everyone shudders when Hill says the limit is 11 nights. After that, each of his patients transformed into the creature known as the Wendigo. When the video ends, Hill's voice starts coming from the radio, and he tells the group that victory is possible, but the price is high, as at least one of them will have to be sacrificed. Abel shows curiosity about this alternative, and Nina once again is disgusted by his lack of character. Convinced that Hill has the answers, Clover finds the sanatorium on the Glore Valley map and calls the therapist on the radio, setting up a meeting with him. Her friends think it's a trap and become even more suspicious when Hill responds that he is waiting along with Melanie. However, Abel doesn't let them hold back their friend, hoping that this counts as the sacrifice. Everyone revolts at this attitude, and Nina strikes him with the pickaxe to prevent him from hindering the rest during this round. The other two go into the woods looking for Clover, and she stands beside him, waiting patiently. The masked maniac soon arrives, and she asks him to start with Abel. Meanwhile, Clover gets her foot caught in a trap in the middle of the woods and is dragged into a burrow. Max and Megan are getting close when they hear a suspicious noise, and a Wendigo appears at the top of a tree, about to attack them. The two run away, but Megan trips and falls onto a glass ceiling that begins to crack. As Max can't hold her, the roof collapses, and Megan falls into an underground room. From above, Max sees something dragging her body by the legs and decides to get out of there quickly. Clover is still crawling in the dark when he finally finds her, helping her free her foot. It is then that a terrible encounter occurs, as Melanie appears transformed into a Wendigo, and Max defends himself with the trap he removed from Clover's foot. The two flee and hide, but Clover wants to restart the night upon hearing that Megan has died again. With a shard of glass, Max manages to fulfill her request this time, and then takes a sip of water to make his body explode. When the night restarts, their physical condition is much worse, and their memories become confused. From the signatures in the guest book, the group has already spent 13 nights in Glore Valley, and no one seems to have survived longer than that. Then Clover realizes that Megan is not there with them, and no one can find her. She simply did not return this time, and Abel says that the limit may be different for each one, implying that Megan may have departed forever this time. When Abel decides to check his phone, he discovers that there are several videos from previous nights. The four watch themselves going through various horrors and dying in the most bizarre ways, until one of them shows Dr. Hill. He is calmly whistling while checking the bodies on the ground and exits through a white door. Then we see that the one recording the video is Megan, and she says she is going to follow the therapist to get answers. They stop watching when an alarm begins to sound outside, and a procession of Wendigos slowly walks toward the house. Clover loses patience and grabs a pickaxe from the wall, saying she is tired of running and hiding. She apologizes for bringing everyone on this trip and says she is ready to confront the doctor as well as save Megan. The other three decide to accompany her, and they all pass through the white door, entering a long hallway. The path leads to the old Glore Valley, still buried under the collapse. It doesn't take long for the first Wendigo to appear, and everyone holds their breath so that the creature does not see them. It walks away, but another appears much closer, and the group soon finds themselves surrounded. The Wendigos chase the young people through the ruins of the city to the room with the glass ceiling. They manage to close the door, but now the masked maniac is right above them. He stomps down hard until he breaks the ceiling and lands on his feet in the middle of the room, separating the group. Max tells Clover to escape through the other door and continue looking for Megan while he provokes the maniac. Clover enters a dark area, where once again she is attacked by Melanie in her Wendigo form. Seeing that this creature is no longer her sister, she decides to fight for herself from now on and knocks the Wendigo onto a shard of glass, eliminating the threat. At the same time, the masked maniac is also defeated by the trio, who finally work together to win the fight. Another Wendigo appears in Clover's path, but she manages to outsmart it by staying silent and turning off her flashlight. Proceeding, she arrives at the old sanatorium and finds Megan trapped in one of the padded rooms along with a Wendigo. The monster is chained but keeps trying to grab the girl, who is also trapped in the chair. Clover cannot break the glass, which is designed to contain violent patients, so she asks Megan to hold on while she goes to look for the key. This is how she arrives at Hill's office and sees her own patient file, along with screens showing images from various cameras. Hill arrives right after, locking the door behind him. He says Clover's case is very interesting and mentions the 2 times she attempted to harm herself over the past year. Controlling her anger, she asks why he is doing this to her and pretends to listen to the answer while pushing his cup to fall under a drip. Hill explains that he is a trauma specialist and that Glore Valley is the perfect place to conduct experiments, studying how each one's fear influences their own horrors. At this point, the Wendigo is almost freeing itself from the wall, while others hunt Nina, Abel, and Max through the tunnels. Then Hill takes a sip from his cup, and Clover says that this time he will be the one to be sacrificed. He realizes what she did and tries to lunge at her, but there is no more time, and his body explodes. The sand in the hourglass is running out when Clover grabs the key from the cell out of a puddle of slime and rushes to free Megan. The two escape just in time, leaving the room as the Wendigo breaks free from its chains and closing the door in time to trap it inside. Several others appear on the way to the exit, but the two manage to dodge them all and reach the surface. Clover's hand emerges from the ground and she begins to rise, just as Melanie did a year ago. The Wendigos manage to reach her and pull her legs, but then Max grabs her hand, and we see that the others have already managed to exit the tunnels. With their help, Clover and Megan also escape, and the sand in the hourglass runs out just as the first rays of sun appear. Finally free, the 5 friends get into Abel's car and leave that terrible town. In Hill's office, the cameras show another car arriving, and we hear the sinister whistle of the doctor.